Hi everyone, you're welcome to Wednesdays with Wing. Thank you very much for joining us today. We have today with us Hannah Jukes. Hannah is a geothermal geologist at TownRock Energy. After completing her undergraduate in geography from the Newcastle, Hannah pursued her passion for geology with a master's in structural geology with geophysics from the University of Leeds. After a brief time working as a GIS and graphics officer for Devon and Cornwall Police, she is now working as a geothermal geologist at TownRock Energy, leading their BODYHEAT technology. And Hannah is also a committee member of Women in Geothermal UK. Before we get on to Hannah's talk, just a few housekeeping. Please, if you're not on mute, well, I guess all attendees are on mute. Yes, let's just try to avoid disruptions. And then we will have time for questions at the end of Hannah's presentation. So please, if you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat and we'll have time for that. So now, Hannah, over to you. Looking forward to a very interesting topic today on BODYHEAT. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Zainab. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Hannah, and I'm a geothermal geologist working for TownRock Energy. And I'm going to talk to you today about how putting people at the heart of the story can gain greater publicity for geothermal energy. So I'm going to talk to you through why our system's relevant, the technology and science behind it, and our first pilot project, and then what the future will hold for BODYHEAT. So the story from my perspective. So why am I relevant to the story? So as Zainab said, I did my undergraduate degree in geography at Newcastle Uni, and then went on to do a master's in structural geology with geophysics at the University of Leeds. I then did a brief stint with the police down in Devon and Cornwall, and but still had a big passion for geoscience and geology and geothermal. And then in a last-minute trip in October last year, I went to the World Geothermal Congress and bumped into the CEO of TownRock Energy, David Townsend. And after having many conversations highlighting our joint enjoyment for clubbing and for geology, he introduced me to BODYHEAT, and which instantly caught my attention. And so fast forward a few months, and I've made a swift move from the south coast of England to Scotland, and I now work for TownRock Energy as the lead for BODYHEAT, and also working on mine water geothermal as well. And I just wanted to show today why how BODYHEAT has quite drastically changed my life in an unexpected way. And I feel I represent the audience in which BODYHEAT captures, and just how it's an innovative technology which is very relatable to just the standard people like myself. So what is the issue? As we all are aware, climate change is a big issue at the minute. With extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and there has been discussions about decarbonising electricity for a decade or so, but there has been difficulty with decarbonising heating and cooling demands, and we're just at the start of that conversation. And there is a demand because of winter and summer and night and day. There's fluctuations in the heating and cooling needs. And so there's a demand to decarbonise heating and cooling, but also for thermal storage. And so why is this relevant to clubbing? So club culture and youth culture go hand in hand. As we've seen across the decades, it's been a way of blowing off steam, and its club culture has evolved to meet the needs of society. So from ballrooms and dance halls in the 19th and 20th century, to jazz clubs and disc sessions in the 40s and 50s, and then to illegal raves and nightclubs as we see in the 21st century. But it also has had some opposition with negative attention in the 90s, and then moving on to more recently with COVID-19 hitting the leisure and entertainment industry harder than any other. The club culture is facing its biggest challenge yet with trying to trying to thrive in a society engulfed by climate change and COVID-19. But there are methods which clubs can take to try and tackle climate change. So by reducing the carbon output, by reducing the reliance on CO2 fuel technologies, and just becoming sustainable venues. And so what is our solution? So our solution is BODYHEAT. And what is BODYHEAT? So BODYHEAT is a low carbon technology installed into buildings for heating and cooling purposes. So it harnesses the heat emitted from dancers, and then it creates a thermal energy store right beneath their feet. And then real-time data can be displayed from the data that we're collecting. So this is to get across the efficiency of the system, energy and carbon savings that are happening as a result of the system being in venues. And it ultimately is making venues or cities help reach their carbon net zero pledges. So for example, we all are aware that we're trying to reach 2050 with carbon net zero, but cities such as Glasgow are trying to reach it by 2030, and then some venues are trying to reach earlier, more specific targets. So this is what BODYHEAT will aim to do. And how does it work? So BODYHEAT, as I said, well, in clubs previously, heat creates thermal energy, and traditionally you'll have HVAC systems, so heating, ventilations and air conditioning systems, and they just take the heat generated by dancers and just dump it outside, or they just don't have a system in place at all, and then it's a very sweaty venue. Whereas BODYHEAT will take the energy from people dancing, and then that energy will be converted into fluid, which is being circulated in pipes around the venue. Those pipes will then distribute that heat into a series of boreholes, which are beneath the venue, and the thermal conductivity of the rocks will mean that this heat energy can be stored in the rocks from days up until years, and then brought back into the venue to heat or cool the nightclub as and when it's needed. So it has two functions. It can provide heating and cooling. So how the system actually works. So for conceptual reasons, we can think about a fridge. So this is just a diagram of a fridge, which contains a heat pump, and then just a diagram of a heat pump. So hypothetically, let's say you go to the shop and you buy some sausages from the shop, and you get them out of the fridge, and then in the time between them being in the fridge in the shop and you getting home, they've got slightly warmer again, and you put them back in the fridge to keep them fresh. But in that time, they have got warmer, so they've accumulated some heat energy. So in putting the sausages into the fridge is kind of taking that heat energy out of the sausages, leaving the sausages cooler, and that heat energy is passed into the first heat exchanger within the heat pump, which is an evaporator. So the heat then in the evaporator, it turns the refrigerant from a liquid into a gas. This gas then travels down into a compressor where the refrigerant is turned hot by increasing pressure, and then it passes through to a condenser. And at this point in a fridge, the condenser just chucks the energy out into your kitchen, so the heat is just deposited into your kitchen, leaving the refrigerant cooler. It then passes through an expansion valve, which depressurizes the fluid and then passes back into the pipes within the fridge for the next set of heat, and that's just the cycle it takes. So while it's good to understand the concept of the fridge, it's ever so slightly different with our system. So in a heat pump, where the heat from the fridge is just chucked out into the kitchen, the heat is exchanged. So from the closed system in the fridge, you have another closed system in the body heat system, where the heat is exchanged into this other closed system, and then that fluid is then like piped out to the heat demand, so like homes or factories or like underground heating. So it's just ever so slightly different where the heat is getting transferred to. So now we understand, well, hopefully you all understand, the workings of a heat pump. We can look at how that is incorporated into our body heat system. So firstly, we'll look at the cooling mode. So these are the potential venues that you have where dancers will be, and so people in the heat. And like if you imagine people are the sausages, the heat is taken from the sausages and from the people by and into the fluid within the pipes. This then gets piped out of the venue and passed through a heat pump, and then it gets sent out to the boreholes and can be stored in the boreholes for up to years. Or the second option is for it to be pumped instantly back into the venue for other optional heating, such as underground heating, underfloor heating. So that's the way it cools, by it takes the heat out of the venue and pumps it underground. And then the heating mode is, once that heat is in the boreholes, it gets brought back up, passed through heat pumps, so to just elevate the temperature slightly, and then passed back into the venues for heating purposes. So some venues might not just be nightclubs, or they might have events on in the day, or just for like their employees to work, that they need heating and cooling purposes. So it's just ultimately a recycling of the energy from the dancers. So that's the basics of the system, and now looking on to our pilot project at SWG3. So SWG3 is it's a cultural hub, as it's known across Europe, but it's in Glasgow, situated by the River Clyde. And it covers 12,500 metres squared. It's got 5 unique venues, such as galleries and community gardens, which ties in well with the heating and cooling purposes that BODYHEAT can offer. It houses 120 resident artists and creative businesses, so it's quite diverse. So before BODYHEAT, SWG3, probably like a lot of other venues similar, employed heating, ventilation and air conditioning systems. So you've got the ventilation systems, you've got air source heat pumps, and you've got gas boilers for the underfloor heating, and none of them really work that well. So they're not that efficient. They have high energy costs, and ultimately they embed carbon emissions into the building design, which, as circulating back to climate change, is what we're trying to avoid. So BODYHEAT at SWG3. So back here, well, a couple of years ago, SWG3 and TownRock wanted to come together to produce the first pilot project here. And with funding from the Low Carbon Infrastructure Transition Programme, which is from the Scottish Government, as well as delivery partners with Harley Haddo, we have been able to produce our first BODYHEAT system at SWG3. And we had a launch event for it in November 2021. This was in the middle of COP26, so it's quite ideal with a lot of climate change delegates being present. And what did people think of it? It kind of blew up into a bit of a global media frenzy. So basically, there's over 115 media mentions of how from the BBC News, Australian radio shows, the New York Times, Forbes, and I think ultimately it grabbed the attention of so many because it's so relatable. So the technology on its own it's a technology which has been used for years for like domestic like heating purposes, but the application of that heating is what makes it innovative. It makes regular standard people who go to nightclubs, the youth culture of today, feel like they're giving back and helping and contributing towards climate change. So it's putting the people at the heart of the story as the title of the talk. It's just putting standard people at the heart of the story, and that's what's bringing publicity for Geothermal Energy, and it's ultimately a brand that we're developing. So you could have like body heat events where they're like more like events which are green and carbon reducing compared to other events at the clubs. It'll eventually remove gas boilers for SWG3, so they'll eventually hopefully be entirely reliant on just the use of body heat systems, and it's saving 20 tonnes a year in comparison to air source heat pumps of carbon. So this is what's kind of grabbed the media's attention, and I think this is why it has kind of become this global media frenzy, as I phrased it. So in summary, Body Heat is looking to decarbonise heating and cooling for events venues, and the drivers of the media attention have been because it's relatable and it puts the consumer at the heart of the solution. It's a known technology already, but with an innovative application. And whilst people may think that with tackling climate change, it comes with a sacrifice, so increased prices or travel prices, this is a solution which anybody can get involved with. And on top of COVID, and people are so eager to get back out and enjoy themselves, and this is a greener outlook on getting back in a post-COVID society. But ultimately, it's not just marketing and it's not just the media side of things that we're focusing on. We are achieving 5 out of the 13 sustainable development goals, those being like climate action, it's sustainable cities, economic growth, affordable and clean energy. So it's a really great way of making venues and cities sustainable. So what is next for Body Heat? So Body Heat Club. So Body Heat Club is a joint venture on the back of the Body Heat system being developed. It's a climate tech startup between TownRock Energy and SWG3, which is looking to expand. So our current market is just SWG3 in Glasgow, but we're hoping to expand into England with clubs in Manchester, London, Liverpool, and then we've had interest from clubs in Berlin, in America, but we're not just stopping at clubs, we're hoping to expand into gyms and to create a portable system for festivals. So there's scope for this to go pretty big, we hope. So thank you for listening. I hope you've that's summarised well what Body Heat is and what Body Heat Club aims to achieve in the coming years. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hannah, for that interesting presentation. Thank you for telling us more about the science behind Body Heat and how the technology is really helping to make people see themselves at the heart of driving renewable energy. And I think one of the questions that I actually had, you covered it in when you talked about what's next in terms of how Body Heat can be used not just in clubs, but also in gyms and in a lot of places where we have people gathering in enclosed spaces and producing a lot of heat. Before any questions come through, I think I'll just maybe start off with asking. So, do you think that this technology can generally be used in any enclosed space where there's a lot of heat being generated and not just from humans? So, for example, if I think about a server room, there's a lot of heat being generated by computers. And is it something that can really be transferable generally from any space, or are there certain limitations? So what really do you think about that?
I guess I haven't really thought about it beyond the heat generated from humans. I think your thought process there with like from servers and stuff is a really good idea, but the only limitation is it needs to have the heat demand as well. So ultimately you can have all this heat, but if there's no heat demand to supply the heat to, then it kind of restricts you a little bit. But I'm not entirely sure on that one, to be honest, as to whether it could be used in like that situation. But I'm sure I can have a look into that and definitely get back to you with if it's something that we can consider, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think it's really an interesting technology and something that's probably transferable because generally it can be used for heating buildings and cooling buildings, which I mean it's a lot of energy demand. I think we have a question here. So the first question says, thanks for a great talk. You may have said, but how deep are the thermal storage boreholes?
So they range from about 150 to just shy of 200 meters. And that's just at our site with SWG3, but I guess it'll depend. So kind of like looking forward, going to other sites, it'll depend on the heat demand and the heat supply will kind of justify as to how deep they actually will go. But we, through our software and analysis, kind of figured out that between 150 and 200 meters was a good depth because obviously with increasing depth you get greater like capacity for heat storage and thermal conductivity. So that seemed like the ideal depth for us at that site.
Yeah. So I would imagine that the depths would be quite similar to terms of like the depth of boreholes for aquifer thermal energy storage, because they're quite similar concepts and technologies.
Yeah, exactly. It's just with the site at SWG3, it's just a closed loop system, whereas with I think aquifer thermal storage, it's an open loop system. But I think body heat can be developed into kind of whatever it needs. So if there is a potential for an open loop system, I'm sure that can be developed into the body heat system going forwards.
Okay. I'm not sure if we have any more questions coming in, but while we wait for that, I think I'll just get on to something I was curious to know. So regarding the length of time that the energy can be stored underground, I don't know if you could talk about how long this energy can be stored underground for, and considering the relationship of this technology with geothermal energy, would we say that this is base load energy, or is it something that is intermittent? Yeah.
So the capabilities at SWG3 are to store the heat for years. I think that's how long, like that's the potential that we've had in our minds going with the system. But ultimately, like the body heat system hasn't been built to achieve like base load energy. It's more to achieve the balancing of the peak heating and cooling demands. So that's like kind of how it's been developed. Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for that.
Zainab, if you look in the question box, you'll find a whole load of questions that people have been asking. And while you find that, I can ask the same questions to Hannah. So there's one here from David Offer saying, presumably this can be used in gyms too. And I think we saw pictures of that.
Yeah, this is something that we are looking into at the minute, and hopefully be able to incorporate the activity kind of undergone at like class with gym classes as well and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely something we're looking into and is in the pipeline. Did that answer the question okay?
And yep, and there's another one. I don't know if you found it. It's on the far right of the if you look up above the chat box, I don't know if you maybe you can't see it, so I'll just continue on, then I'll enable it for you in a second. So another question here is from Hester, saying, awesome talk. What stage is the pilot project at currently?
So we've actually just completed drilling a couple of weeks ago at the pilot project, and it's hoping to be operational by May 2022. So May this year, it should be all underway and yeah, operating, which is really exciting. And yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So there's another one here. So from Simram Johal. Hi Hannah, really interesting topic. I'd just like to ask how the technology is different from heat pumps that are used in district heating systems.
It's not necessarily any different. It is still a heat pump that is being used, so it's still the same technology of kind of the fluids passing out into the heat pump and then through a heat exchange and kind of like underground, and the same kind of coming back when the heat's brought back up. It is still, I think it is still the same technology for district heating as well.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, go on. Go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's just the application, I guess, of where the heat is coming from. That with maybe district heating, it might be like Zainab said earlier, like aquifer thermal storage. So you're just bringing the heat from underground rather than taking it underground and then bringing it back up. But ultimately, I think kind of like the heat pump side of things is the same. It's the same technology.
Okay, thank you very much, Hannah. Yes, I can see there are loads of questions here. So the next one is from John. So hi Hannah, you made reference to TownRock's aspirations for wider applications. Can you share any of the conversations you've had with potential clients, like, ooh, that concept could be applied in my business? So I think John is keen to know any maybe external collaborations that have been made, I guess.
I don't think we are quite at the stage where we can be releasing any information regarding our client engagement at the minute. But if you are interested, then you could maybe drop me an email or to kind of discuss that further. But at the minute, I don't think I can really give out that information just yet. But it's very exciting.
Great. Okay, so the next one is from David. So how do you make boreholes portable for festivals? I'm not sure if David is trying to ask, for example, festivals are probably not permanent sites, festival locations. So how do you apply this technology?
So I think with it's very much just an idea at the minute, which we haven't refined with regards to the portable system, but it wouldn't be using, as you say, because you can't move boreholes. It wouldn't be using that. It would be more kind of I can't really tell you the exacts, but it's more kind of the heat from within, say like a festival tent, which will be extracted from the tent kind of in a similar way and stored maybe differently, is how I'm going to answer that. I'm going to go with, because I don't want to give away too much information on that one either. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. So I think that also touched on Maddie's question when she asked how this would work for festivals. So I think that has been answered as well. We have a question from Hester. Is there any way to use your GIS skills to screen for the most promising sites? I think that's a very valuable question, because I mean, even with geothermal energy, we are still looking at methods and techniques for assessing sites and trying to see which locations are most profitable.
Yeah, I guess so. So using GIS, we can kind of understand the geology, or kind of bringing in kind of the geology to understand what is available beneath us, like say an example site or a venue, to also understand the size of the area, the size of the venue for a potential amount of boreholes, or the demand for the area. You could use GIS to kind of look at if you've got if you have got a club, like what if maybe you're getting quite a lot of heat extracted from that venue, but could it be passed on? Is there excess basically heat supply? Could that be then connected up to other, because body heat has been built knowing that it can be scalable, so that it can, if the venue grows or the site grows, then it can kind of reach those demands as well. So I guess that can be looked at in the broader setting of incorporating GIS to see where the heat demand is, alongside kind of other, like say like the geology I said, for example, to kind of bring all that together to get a basic understanding of where you could go from there.
Yeah, and I think that probably would tie into the next question from Caleb, asking if this system could be incorporated in schools. And so I think if we're going to look at it broadly, not just schools, but in many locations where we have people gathering, what do you have to say about that?
I guess, yeah, it's I don't necessarily know if body heat would be the exact technology that you could use for like schools and things, but touching on, so the other like kind of department we in TownRock Energy is mine water geothermal. So like a lot of the kind of like north of England and Scotland have like all like abandoned coal mines beneath them, and you could use you could kind of like tap into that resource and do more of like an open loop system there. So to generate heat, well, to use the heat generated with it that's just naturally stored within these coal mines, you can use that to power kind of like schools or leisure centres, things like that. So I'm not too sure the extent to which body heat like specifically would work for that, but other types of like technologies that we're using within TownRock definitely can meet those demands, like mine water geothermal, which is very much like because of like what mine water was, well, mining the industry, it's kind of quite highly built on old like coal mines and stuff. So there is like the demand for it. So maybe like district heating would be an option and stuff. So that's say a better or an alternative solution for schools and kind of like leisure centre demands and things like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Hannah. I think, the benefit of the technology is that it can be transferred. It's really about, how we generate the heat. Like you said, that makes body heat kind of different. It makes it unique. But then that technology is not just limited to heat generated, by human beings. It can be used in a lot of places where we have heat that is generated or is probably naturally occurring as well. Yeah,
exactly. And just tapping into those resources and making sure there's a demand there for it is great.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about body heat is that, like you said in your topic, it puts people at the heart of the discussion. So for a lot of people, this is relatable, realizing that what I do is generating renewable energy directly and not just indirectly. I think is something people will be interested to participate in and learn about. So
yeah, definitely. I think that's ultimately like what grabbed my attention about body heat. I mean, I'd kind of didn't even think it sounds so obvious when you think about it, like going to clubs and stuff. It's always like so sweaty and horrible. So like it seems like an obvious thing, but actually doing it, and it like I've told like say like friends who are my age who've like kind of never heard about it before, and it instantly makes them think, oh my god, like you're doing something to kind of like help towards climate change, which feels like it's something which is out of our reach, that like we can't do, or like it's not something like we as individuals can achieve. But by doing something that like the youth of today generally enjoy doing anyway, I think it's just such a bonus. and makes it so that
Yes, I'm not sure if we have any more questions, Ollie. I can't see any more in the questions box. I don't know if there are any more elsewhere.
Nope, that's all of them.
Okay, great. So, well, I guess we have come to the end of a very interesting and relatable presentation and application of geothermal to renewable energy. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And we look forward to seeing you again next month during our Wednesdays with Wing. And thank you very much, Hannah, for your time and for sharing with us a lot more about BODYHEAT.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I hope it's all made sense.